Welcome to this deep dive
Yeah.
into a fascinating look at the world of love and relationships through the lens of evolutionary biology.
Okay.
So to be honest with you,
Yeah.
it's sometimes less than romantic,
Dress and romantic, yeah.
this view.
Yeah, it is interesting how we often think about love as this purely emotional experience,
Yeah.
almost mystical.
Uh-huh.
But as you'll see from this deep dive, there's
Yeah.
a whole other layer to it, of
Right.
biological programming, if
Yeah.
you will,
Okay.
influencing our choices and behaviors when it comes to love.
We're going deep on a book
Okay.
that really digs into the primal instincts
Yeah.
that might be behind why we fall in love, who we're attracted to,
Right.
and maybe even why some people seem to be perpetually single.
Interesting.
So this book approaches love less as a romantic ideal
Right.
and more as a strategy for genetic survival.
Yeah, that makes
And it
sense.
may even make you rethink some of your assumptions about love and relationships.
It definitely might.
All right, so let's unpack this.
Okay.
Is there a biological basis for why some people are perpetually single?
Oh, okay.
Do men and women really look for different things in a partner?
Yeah.
And is love truly irrational? Or is there a deeper evolutionary logic at play?
These are all great questions
Yeah.
that we'll explore today.
Yeah.
So let's start with the most fundamental drive of all living things, reproduction.
Reproduction,
Yeah.
right? Because without reproduction,
Yeah.
there's no species to even talk about love in the first place.
Right.
But here's something I found interesting.
Hmm.
The book points out that sexual reproduction, with all its complexities and rituals,
Right.
isn't necessarily the most efficient way to reproduce.
Right.
Asexual reproduction is much simpler
Uh-huh.
and more reliable.
Sure.
So why go through all the trouble?
Exactly.
Right.
And that's precisely the question the book tackles.
Right.
Why would sexual reproduction evolve and become so dominant? The answer lies in the concept of genetic diversity
Oh.
and the power of sexual selection.
So with sexual reproduction,
Yeah.
you have the genes of two individuals combining,
Right.
which creates more variation in the offspring.
Uh-huh.
And that variation fuels adaptation and evolution,
Yeah.
allowing species to adapt to changing environments or resist diseases.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Asexually reproducing species produce mostly identical copies,
Right.
which leaves them vulnerable to these kinds of environmental changes or
Yeah.
diseases.
Uh-huh.
So in the long run,
Yeah.
mixing up the gene pool through sexual reproduction provides a huge evolutionary advantage,
Right.
even if it's a bit messier and less predictable in the short term.
So it's like nature has a backup plan for when things get tough.
That's a great way to put it. And, it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Ah.
The book highlights that many species actually utilize both sexual and asexual reproduction,
Oh, wow.
depending on the circumstances and what's most advantageous at the time. It's pretty clever, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's another fascinating concept in the book,
Okay.
sexual selection.
Okay.
It argues that survival of the fittest isn't just about being strong or resilient.
Great. Survival of the fittest is really about reproductive success,
Yeah.
about which individuals get to pass on their genes to the next generation.
Okay.
And sexual selection is a huge part of that. It's
Yeah.
the process by which certain traits become more common
Right.
because they increase an individual's chances of finding a mate.
And the book says that females are often the ones driving this selection process, right?
That's right.
They're essentially the judges in the competition for mates.
That's right. This is where the concept of female choice comes in,
Yep.
because females generally invest more in their offspring, from pregnancy to nurturing.
Right.
They're pickier about their mates.
Uh-huh.
They're looking for the best possible genes to ensure the survival of their young.
And this can sometimes lead to traits that seem,
Yeah.
well, counterintuitive
Yeah.
from a purely survival standpoint.
Right.
Like the peacock's tail.
Exactly.
It's beautiful and attracts females.
Right.
But it also makes the peacock a much easier target for predators.
It's a classic example of how sexual selection can sometimes trump pure survival instincts.
Wow.
The male peacock's tail is essentially a signal to the female, look at me, I'm healthy, I'm strong, I have good genes.
Wow, interesting.
And clearly, for peacocks, the reproductive advantage of having that impressive tail outweighs the risk.
Wow. So how does all this play out in the human world?
Yeah.
We're not peacocks flashing our feathers. But do we have our own versions of these signals and selection criteria?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We might not have flashy tails,
Okay.
but we have our own ways of signaling our attractiveness and fitness to potential mates.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most important factors, the book argues, is rank.
Rank, you mean like social status?
It is related to social status,
Okay.
but it goes deeper than that. If you think about it in terms of animal societies, rank or hierarchy is a way to quickly assess the genetic quality of a potential mate.
Oh, well.
The higher an individual's rank,
Right.
the more likely they are to have desirable traits, strength, health, access to resources, all the things that contribute to survival and reproductive success.
So in the animal kingdom, a high-ranking male is basically a billboard for good genes.
Right.
But how does this concept of rank apply to humans?
The book makes the case that humans, despite our complex societies and cultural norms, are still influenced by this primal instinct to assess rank when choosing a mate.
Right.
And it uses this amusing story about Lieutenant Rejewski and Cornet Obolensky to illustrate the point. I mean, have you heard of them?
No, but I love a good story. Let's hear it.
Okay, so Cornet Obolensky,
Okay.
a rather shy and polite young man, asks Lieutenant Rejewski, known for his success with women, for advice on how he manages to win them over so easily. Rejewski, always the bold one, replies, "It's simple. You approach a lady and say, 'Madam, allow me to,' you know?" Obolensky, shocked, says, "But sir, one could get slapped for such rudeness."
Right.
To which Rejewski, with a twinkle in his eye, replies, "That's possible, but somehow I manage."
Okay, so what's the takeaway here?
Okay.
Is it that being a charming rogue is more effective than being a gentleman?
Well, not quite. The point is that women, at least on an instinctive level, might be more attracted to men who project an aura of high rank, even if that rank doesn't necessarily align with their actual social status or moral character.
It's interesting.
Rejewski, despite his crude approach, exudes confidence and a certain dominance, which signals high rank Obolensky, while more refined lacks that same presence.
So are you suggesting that those initial gut-level feelings of attraction are more instinct-driven than we might think?
The book definitely makes the case for that.
It argues that our instincts, which have been honed over millions of years of evolution, are still very much a part of us, even if we're not always conscious of them.
But we don't just fall for anyone who acts dominant or aggressive. What about all those other qualities we value in a partner? Kindness, intelligence, shared interests. Where do those fit into this picture?
Those are all incredibly important factors, especially for those of you looking for long-term relationships. But the book's point is that these more rational considerations might come into play a bit later in the process. That initial spark of attraction, that feeling of being drawn to someone, could very well be heavily influenced by these deeper instinctual drives.
So it sounds like there's a sort of tug of war going on between our instincts and our more rational selves, especially when it comes to love and relationships.
Yes, and it's in that tension and that interplay between instinct and reason that so much of the drama and complexity of human relationships unfold.
That's heavy. You know? It really makes you think. It's a lot to consider.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've got this primal instinct to assess rank. It makes sense in the animal kingdom. But how does it translate to humans in the modern world? I mean, it's not like we're sizing each other up based on who has the biggest antlers or the sharpest claws.
It's definitely more nuanced than that. But the book argues that for women especially, these instincts might still be influencing who they find attractive, even if it's operating below the level of conscious awareness.
So you're saying that women are instinctively drawn to men who display certain traits that signal high rank, but what exactly are those traits? Does this mean women are just attracted to, well, jerks?
That's a common misconception.
And the book addresses it directly. It's not about being a jerk. It's more about the signals that suggest strength, competence, the ability to provide and protect. These signals can manifest in different ways. Confidence, decisiveness, ambition, a sense of humor.
So it's not necessarily about brute force or aggression, but more about those qualities that would have been associated with survival and success in our evolutionary past.
Exactly. Think about it this way. in our evolutionary history, a man who could lead, protect, and provide was a valuable asset.
Right.
And women were instinctively drawn to those qualities.
Okay.
Because they increase the chances of survival for themselves and their offspring.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But what about physical appearance?
Right.
Surely that plays a role too, right?
Of course, physical appearance matters. But the book suggests that for women, physical attributes often take a backseat to this perception of rank.
Okay.
It's more about the whole package, the combination of traits that signal a good potential mate.
So it's about looking beyond the surface and paying attention to those deeper qualities that suggest strength, competence, and yes, maybe even a little bit of that primal allure.
Exactly.
But now I'm curious about the flip side.
Okay.
What about men?
Right.
What are their instinctive drivers when it comes to choosing a mate?
Well, according to this book, men are primarily attracted to novelty.
Novelty?
Yeah.
You mean they're just looking for the next shiny object?
Well, it's a bit more complex than that. Okay. Remember, men don't face the same biological constraints as women when it comes to reproduction.
Right.
They can, theoretically, father many children with multiple partners.
Okay.
So, from an evolutionary perspective,
there's a drive to spread their genes to ensure their genetic legacy continues.
So it's not just about fleeting attraction to something new. It's tied to this deeper biological imperative to reproduce and pass on their genes.
Exactly. And physical attributes play a significant role here.
Okay.
Because men are wired to respond to visual cues that signals fertility and reproductive potential. It's all part of that deep-seated drive to ensure the continuation of the species.
Okay, so we've got these different sets of primal instincts driving initial attraction in men and women. But where does that leave us in the modern world with our ideals of monogamy and long-term relationships?
Yeah.
It seems like there's a potential for conflict there.
You've hit on a really important point.
Right.
The book argues that our modern notions of love and relationships can sometimes clash with those deeply ingrained instincts.
So we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
We're told to follow our hearts.
To find that one true love. But what if our hearts, or rather our instincts, aren't necessarily aligned with those long-term relationship goals?
That's the question the book raises.
Right.
What if following our heart leads us to a partner who's great for a fling, but not necessarily for building a stable, lasting relationship?
Are you saying our instincts could actually sabotage our chances of finding lasting love?
Well, the book presents it as a possibility. It argues that emotional, instinct-driven choices may not always lead us to partners who embody the qualities we might rationally consider important for the long haul, like kindness, a strong work ethic, or shared intellectual curiosity.
This is fascinating, but it's also a little unsettling.
Right.
It's like realizing there's this ancient operating system running in the background, influencing our decisions in love and relationships, even when we think we're being completely rational.
It is a bit like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile these seemingly conflicting forces?
Yeah.
On the one hand, we have these primal instincts guiding our initial attraction. And on the other hand, we have this desire for stable, fulfilling, long-term relationships.
It's a real dilemma.
Yeah.
So what's the solution?
Right.
Does the book offer any guidance on how to navigate this tricky terrain?
It does. It gets into some practical advice, really specific strategies for both men and women who are trying to find love and build lasting relationships in this complex, instinct-driven world.
Okay, so we've established that our primal instincts can have a major impact on our love lives, even if we're not fully aware of them.
Right.
But knowing all of this, how can we use this understanding to actually navigate the complexities of modern relationships? Does the book offer any practical advice?
It does, and it gets quite specific. It provides different strategies for both men and women to consider.
All right, let's dive in.
Okay.
What kind of advice does it offer women?
Well, for women, one of the key pieces of advice is to avoid premature intimacy.
So it's about taking your time and not rushing into things physically.
Exactly.
Okay.
The book argues that by delaying intimacy, you can get a better sense of a potential partner's genuine interest and commitment.
Okay.
Is he really into you?
Right.
Or is he just looking for a quick fling?
Right.
Taking your time allows you to observe his behavior and see if his actions match his words.
It's about figuring out if he sees you as a person or just a conquest.
Yes, and it also gives you a chance to evaluate whether he possesses the qualities you'd want in a long-term partner.
What else does the book suggest for women navigating the dating world?
Another important piece of advice is to cultivate qualities that appeal to a partner's rational side, not just their instincts.
This makes sense given that we've been talking about this balance between instinct and reason in relationships. So it's about showcasing those qualities we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Intelligence, kindness, humor, all those things that are important for a lasting connection.
Precisely.
Okay.
Remember, relationships are a complex dance between instinct and reason.
Yeah.
While initial attraction might be instinct-driven,
right,
building a strong, lasting bond requires those deeper qualities to come into play.
You're not just a pretty face.
Yeah.
You're a fascinating, multifaceted individual.
Exactly.
Okay.
And one final piece of advice the book offers women is to be wary of falling into the easy availability trap.
What does that mean?
Don't mistake fleeting sexual interest for long-term potential.
Okay.
Just because a man is initially drawn to you because you're readily available doesn't necessarily mean he's looking for a lasting commitment.
Yeah.
Sometimes the chase itself is part of the appeal.
So the takeaway for women is to know your worth, not settle for less than you deserve, and not be afraid to be a bit of a challenge.
Right.
Make him work for it a little. Let him prove that he's genuinely interested and invested.
That's a great way to put it. Now let's shift gears and look at the advice the book has for men.
Okay, what do men need to know about navigating this complex dating landscape?
Well, first and foremost, the book emphasizes the importance of being direct and confident when expressing your interest.
So no more playing games or sending mixed signals.
Right.
Okay.
Be upfront about your intentions. Women appreciate honesty and directness.
Okay.
It shows that you're confident and that you value her time.
Be assertive, but respectful.
Right.
Make it clear you're interested, but also respect her boundaries and decisions.
Right.
What other advice does the book have for men?
Another important point is to focus on building a genuine connection beyond superficial charm or displays of dominance.
So it's not just about showing off material possessions or trying to prove how alpha you are.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about showing a genuine interest in her as a person.
Right.
Listen to her. Engage in meaningful conversations.
Okay.
Share your own thoughts and feelings.
Right.
Let her see the real you, not just a facade.
Show her that you see her as an individual with her own thoughts, opinions, and experiences.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And finally, the book stresses the importance of persistence, but always coupled with respect. Attraction is a dance, not a conquest.
Right.
And sometimes it takes time for feelings to develop.
So don't give up easily, but at the same time, don't be pushy or disrespectful.
Right.
If she's not interested, respect her decision and move on.
Yes, it's about finding that balance between pursuing your interest and respecting her autonomy.
Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive into the biological underpinnings of love and attraction.
Yeah.
From the drive to reproduce and the power of sexual selection to the role of rank and the push and pull between instinct and reason, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
And I think it's important to remember that even though we live in a modern world with all its complexities, these primal instincts are still a part of us.
Yeah.
They influence our choices and behaviors in ways we might not always realize.
Absolutely.
It's like having this ancient operating system running in the background, even as we're trying to navigate the very modern landscape of love and relationships.
That's a great analogy. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something for you to ponder. Now that you've had a glimpse into the biological roots of attraction, how might this understanding influence your own approach to finding a partner or navigating your current relationships?
It's a question worth reflecting on.
Right.
Do we fight against these instincts?
Yeah.
Or do we find a way to work with them? Maybe the answer lies somewhere in between.
Yeah, it probably does.
Understanding these dynamics can help us make more conscious and informed choices in our quest for love and connection.
Absolutely.
And if you're interested in exploring this topic further, I highly recommend checking out the book we discussed today.
Yes, definitely.
It's full of even more insights and anecdotes that might surprise you.
It is.
And who knows, maybe this deep dive will inspire future episodes where we explore other aspects of love, relationships, and human behavior from an evolutionary perspective.
I hope so.
There's always more to learn and discover.
Right.
Until then, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.